Today's episode of the Just Keep Swimming podcast is brought to you by Audible. Audible is an online audiobook and podcast service offering over 10,000 books and the ability to listen to your favorite podcasts, including the Just Keep Swimming podcast. I personally use Audible all the time and suggest you take a listen to Intentional Living by John C. Maxwell. In this book, Mr. Maxwell shares his story on how he was able to live a noble and purposeful life and gives you tips and tricks so you can do the same. So please start your 30-day free trial now at www.audibletrial.com/JKS podcast, all lowercase. Again, that is www.audibletrial.com/JKS podcast. And if you have any more questions or concerns for the Just Keep Swimming podcast, you're always welcome to reach out to us on Facebook or at Instagram at Just Keep Swimming _podcast, or you can email us at jkspodcast702@gmail.com. And with that out the way, let's dive into it. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Just Keep Swimming podcast. This is your friend, your boy, your host, Mr. Adrian Jackson, and we back at it again with another great episode for you. And you already know who's with me. It's the man, the myth, the legend. It's Mr. 1-3 dropping hot beats for the city. So make sure you guys check out his latest projects as always. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about taking accountability. So the other day I was at school and I got a lot of ACT waivers that I want to give out before they expire. So I had some students signed up for it, and I went to go to the class to pull out one of these students, and it was one of my favorite teacher classes. He always helps me out, let the students come to my office when they're in his class and stuff. So, I really appreciated him, and it's the start of the school year, so I want to go say what's up. So I go down there, I walk in his class, and as I walk in, there's the counselors doing a presentation, like the senior presentation, talking about things they need to do for their senior year. So while they're doing the presentation, I kind of walk over to the teacher on the side, say what's up, we have a little small conversation, and I ask if I can borrow the student, and he's like, yeah, no problem. So he waves the student over, the student grabs his stuff, then he comes with me. But as we're walking out the door, the counselor kind of pauses and looks at me, and I'm sitting here like, what's up, what you about to say? And then she was like, can he wait until after this presentation, blah blah. And I was like, not thinking, I was just like, oh, he's gonna be fine, because they were talking about college at the time. So I was like, oh, I'm the college program, he's gonna be fine, he's gonna be working with me, so it's all good. So she was like, okay, and then I was like, okay, and we walked out and left. But as we were walking back, and as I was helping the student with the waiver, I just couldn't shake that feeling that I did something wrong. And I wasn't sure if I actually did something wrong, but something in my gut was saying, Adrian, you was wrong in that situation. So I end up going to talk to my I call her my main counselor because she's the one I always work with. So I went to go talk to her, and I just kind of shared the experience with her. I was like, was I wrong in this situation? Am I tripping? And she was like, oh, AJ, yeah, because the presentation is about this, that, and the third, and it's a lot more than just college, and we all have to do it, and every student's supposed to hear it and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I can understand what happened right now. And either way, I do owe this counselor an apology. So, right before lunchtime, I went to the counselor's office, and I just, walked in and just apologized and took whatever little rebuttal she had. She told me that when I pulled the student out of class, it made it seem like I was more important than everybody else, or like, my program was more important than what she had to say, and she found it real disrespectful. And I just had to apologize and be like, you know what, that was not the intentions at all. He just signed up for the waiver. I wanted him to get to whatever, but either the case, it could have waited. That was my fault. I just wasn't thinking at all, so I 100% apologize for that, and just hope we can move forward in a better, with a good relationship. And Yeah. So what I did just now was I just took responsibility. And it was funny because when I shared the story with my mom, she was like, well, that's good that you did that, because a lot of people wouldn't have done that. They probably would have just sat back and, been like, oh, well, that's her problem. I didn't do nothing wrong in this situation, because at the end of the day, I'm just doing my job. But at the same time, I had to take that, accountability for myself. Definitely my gut was telling me that, something's not right here. Let me, take a step back and make sure that I didn't burn any bridges that, I need in this situation. Because at the end of the day, I'm a guest at this school. This is not my home school. I'm all over the place, but it's counselors here all the time. And the last thing I want is to have a bad name put on me because of something small like that I did, even though it was small, it rubbed this person in a big way. So I kind of share that story to talk about, accountability and why it's so important to take accountability. So the first point I have for you guys is accountability builds that trust, when you're able to take up for your own, when you're able to, apologize or, just be accountable for what you did in the situation, whether it's 50 people around and, you are one of the people that threw a rock, you can always say, oh, well, everybody was doing that. But it's like, no, it's not about everybody. It's about what you did. And you need to take accountability for your actions and what you did in that situation. Even if there were thousands of other people doing it, you still need to take accountability for what happened, and accountability really builds that trust when somebody's able to stop and say, hey, I messed up. That's my problem. And I'm gonna take responsibility for what I did. Because as we know, there's a lot of people in this world that don't take responsibility. Like if you ever seen somebody get blamed for something that maybe they did do, maybe they didn't do, whatever the case, the first thing they do is get defensive, and they want to fight back. And that right there is not taking accountability. That right there is trying to push the blame on others and say, this person is the reason that I did that, or that person is the reason I did this. And it's like, no, let's not blame others for your actions. Your actions were your actions. Can nobody make you do anything? It goes back to that old statement that the parents you always say, if all your friends would jump off a bridge, would you do the same thing? And a lot of people always like, yeah, I'll do it if all my friends are doing it. But it's like, no, you need to take accountability for your own life. Everybody is doing their own thing and everybody controls their own self. So what are you going to do to control yourself and take accountability for your life? So that's one thing I want to talk about, is just take accountability for your life and step up for what you did to yourself to hurt yourself, or what you did to hurt others. Even if you feel like you probably didn't do it, if you have this gut feeling that, hey, something's not right, I feel like I caused some pain right here, let me take a step back and see what I did in this situation to make me feel like this, or to make the other person feel like this, and I kind of call that not being self-centered and putting others first. And it's kind of interesting I bring this up because yesterday morning I was listening to Power 88 and they had the team talk going on, and one of the teams were telling a story about how she was on her sports team, and she just wasn't feeling the game that day because she thought it was going to be an easy victory, and she had other stuff going on in life, and she just pretty much didn't play the best she could, and they end up losing the game, but she wasn't taking accountability for what she did to make the team lose. She was always saying, well, if y'all would have did this, or we would have did that, or if you guys would have played harder, or if Johnny would have did that. And it's like, no, stop pointing the finger at others and just always know that you have a part to play and you need to take responsibility for your part, because at the end of the day, that's all you can truly do. You can't take responsibility for the coaches coaching or what plays they did. You can't take responsibility for what the other players did do, but you can take responsibility for what you did. And one thing that I love about football was the idea of staying home. So I always thought about staying home as in you being accountable for your job, because what would happen is those who don't watch football, hang out with me, but you got it. So the running back would get the ball, and let's say the running back runs to the left side, but you're stationed on the right side. You could chase after the play. You could get up and go run after the running back, but you need to stay home and sit back and do your job, play your responsible role so you can be accountable for whatever happens. Because what can happen is you go chase off of the running back, and it's a trick play, and the running back hands the ball off to somebody else who runs in the direction where you were, and now you're being held accountable for that spot because that was your responsibility. You were supposed to be in that place right there, but you can't sit here and blame, the linebacker for over pursuing when the linebacker's job wasn't to sit home and wait just to make sure the play didn't come back. That was your responsibility. That was your job. So you need to step up and say, hey team, my fault, I messed that up. And that's one thing I love about football. It's my favorite sport. But if you ever watch the NFL, a lot of times when you see a quarterback do a bad pass, you'll see them tap themselves on the shoulder like, hey, that was my fault, y'all. Oopsies, that was my bad. That was a bad throw on my end. It could have been a beautiful throw. It could have been a spiral. It could have literally just been, tipped the person's fingertips, but at the end of the day, the quarterback's still going to say, hey, that's my fault because I'm accountable to always make sure the ball gets into your hands in a good spot for you to be able to catch it. Like the only time you really see the quarterback get mad about the player is when the ball really does hit them right in the hand, or they hit that little they hit that shot that's like, shooting through a needle pretty much. Like it's like a perfect throw. Like when they hit that and the player drops it, then the quarterback may not say my bad. But a lot of times that's when the wide receiver gets up and say, yeah, that was my fault. I should have caught that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be accountable for that play because the ball hit me dead in my hands and I was wide open. And for some reason, I didn't catch it. That's me. I take full accountability for that, and I think just taking that accountability builds that teamwork, and also it builds growth into you because you get the ability to just practice being accountable for yourself, because what happens is when you avoid that failure, you don't take the opportunity to reflect off of what you did because you're not even looking at what you did. You're trying to say somebody else did it. This person caused this, that person caused that. But it's like, no, you need to stop and reflect and be like, what, let me look about what I did during this part and let me take accountability for what I did. And all that does is going to also build better relationships and teamwork with other people, because if people know that you're going to be accountable for what you do, they can trust you a lot better. I'd rather work with somebody who I know is going to say, hey, you guys, I'm running late right now. I left the house late. I overslept. I messed up. Let me get there though. That was my fault. My bad. Compared to somebody that says, the alarm clock didn't go off, or traffic was bad, or, this person in front of me was driving super slow. And it's like, no, you're late because you could have left the house 5, 10, 15 minutes earlier to make sure you got here. You could have set the alarm clock in an earlier time to make sure you got here. You take responsibility. Don't blame traffic. Don't blame the weather. Don't blame things that are out of your control, and just focus on what's in your control and take accountability for what you did, because at the end of the day, it's your life. Like one of my favorite things that I always hear is Joel Osteen. I think it's Joel Osteen. It's one of the preachers I listen to, but they talking about, what happens when you get to heaven and God asks, oh man, tell me about this day. What happened? And once you start off by saying, oh, well, this day happened because somebody else, they say God is going to just pull that lever and let you fall down because you're not taking accountability for yourself. And that's one thing he's always trying to test you. And he wants you to take accountability for your life. You can't blame others. Don't blame him. Don't blame the dog. Don't blame anybody else but yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who can control you. Can nobody make you do anything in this world? Can nobody make you eat? Can nobody make you sleep? Can nobody make you want to go to the doctor or show up to work? You make it seem like, oh, the boss is going to make me get there or I'll get fired. No, at the end of the day, it's 100% your choice of what you do. You can sit back and not do nothing. Like for example, I know Jess was in pain, and it was like times where she didn't want to go to the hospital, and I was like, we don't have to go to the hospital. I want you to go to the hospital to get you better, to make sure we can figure out what this issue is. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to go, as long as you're fine with that and you're willing to deal with this pain that you are feeling right now, because that's more I don't know what the word is, easier than to go to the hospital and get told bad news, then that's 100% your choice. But you have to be willing to live with that, because at the end of the day, we're trying to get you there, and we can't force nobody. Nobody can force you to get you there. I'm not about to knock you out and drag you to the car and put you in the hospital. Like, no, I'm not about to do that. You're grown. You need to get up and use your own 2 legs to get us there. We can get you there. I'm gonna help you get you there, and I'm gonna stick it out with you, and I'm gonna ride out with you. But at the end of the day, you have to be the one being accountable for yourself and getting yourself up and getting yourself to where you need to be. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that message resonates with you guys today. And I think that's just something that I just always have in my heart. And I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves, where when people always blame others for this, that, and the third. And it's like, stop blaming your parents, stop blaming others, and just learn to be accountable for yourself. One amazing video I listened to the other day, a little YouTube short, he was talking about the 3 things you need to stop doing to get your life better. And number 1 was stop blaming your parents. Stop blaming your parents for whatever type of past they put you through, for whatever type of issues you had growing up, because at the end of the day, they gave you life, so you shouldn't be mad at them for giving you life, because you wouldn't be here experiencing none of that if it wasn't for your parents. Yes, you was probably born in a swamp somewhere, or you was born in a rich family where your parents don't talk to you, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you didn't feel like you was an accident. I used to think that, I'm just an accident right now. Why did my parents bring me here? But they didn't have that choice. They got caught up in whatever situation they got caught up in, and they gave you life, and they did the best they could with what they had to get you to where you need to be. So stop blaming them. Hold accountability for yourself. The second thing they talk about letting go, next thing you need to do is stop blaming your friends and your ex-lovers. You need to take accountability for whatever happened. Forgive them. Understand that life is life and things happen. People grow apart and people hurt each other, and people, sometimes don't think about others, and they just react like I did the other day. And it's like, stop beating them up and saying, oh, I'm this way because that person, or I'm that way because of this person, or if this person never done that to me, I wouldn't be like this. And it's like, no, that thing needed to happen to make you stronger, to make you better, to make you truly the person you need to be. So, take accountability for whatever actions happen, whatever pains you felt. You can take accountability for letting that hurt you so hard, but then move on and let's forgive them and trust that, hey, this right here is just a part of the process, and we're just going to get better after this. And then last but not least is, don't blame yourself. Be accountable for yourself. Yes, things happen. You do wrong things. We all mess up in life. I've messed up plenty of times. I still feel like I'm messing up every single day. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be accountable for my day. Why? Because this is another day that God has made for me. And whatever happens today, I know who holds today, for I hold today. So whatever happens today, I'm going to do the best I can today. And I know that I'm accountable for the day. Whether I decide to lay on the couch all day and do nothing, I'm accountable for that. Whether I decide to get up and wash the dishes and cook dinner and go grocery shopping and mop the floor and do all this stuff, I'm accountable for that. I'm gonna be accountable for everything I do. So my goal for you guys is just try to hold yourself accountable. Don't put blame on others, don't point fingers. One of my favorite slogans we used to say when you was a kid is, when you point one finger forward, you're pointing technically 3 fingers back at yourself, and it's like, stop pointing fingers at others and just look at the person in the mirror and just really say, you know what? I take responsibility for my life, because this is my life. This is the life God has gained for me. And I'm going to start taking accountability for my life and do the best I can to make sure that at the end of the day, I'm happy for the life that I'm accountable for. I don't want to regret nothing. And I just want to be happy for the life that I'm accountable for the good, for the bad, for the happy, for the sad, just for everything in the world. I'm just going to be accountable for who I am, for what I'm doing, for where I'm going. Because at the end of the day, he was born alone, you died alone. Even if you was born with twins, you guys both came out at separate times, and it's not guaranteed you guys are going to pass away at the exact same time. So yeah, man, take accountability for your life. It's yours. Don't waste it. Just know that you have it. Own it. Be happy that you have it. Love it to the fullest, and never let it go for anybody else in this world, because this is the only one you get. And once that play clock runs out, honestly, I do not know what's going to happen, but hey, we know you won't be here. So, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that resonated with you guys today. I hope that made sense at all. If you guys had any stories you'd like to share, you always know you're welcome to reach out to us. You can send us an email at jkspodcast702.com, or you can reach out to us on social media, or however you want to send a message to us. If you want to send me a letter, reach out to me. I'll see my address. You can write me a letter and I'll read on the podcast for you. That's how much I love you guys. But yes, with all that being said, I hope you guys have a great day, a marvelous afternoon, a splendid evening, and remember to just keep swimming.